What is up, everybody? SchwayZ here, and in today's video I'm really excited because I'm reviewing a pretty cool looking vehicle. It's the 2024 Santa Fe Hybrid. I'm going to do an exterior interior walk around and then we'll get behind the wheel and see how this thing drives. Now, before we dive into today's video, I do want to extend a huge thank you to Ken Garff Hyundai of Downtown Salt Lake City for giving me the opportunity to review this vehicle for y'all today. If you guys aren't in the market for a new or used Hyundai, make sure you reach out to them and let them know that SchwayZ sent you. I'm going to put their information down in the description below. Okay, so about the Hyundai Santa Fe Hybrid. Now, the Santa Fe arrived a couple months ago on dealership lots, but the Hybrid was just announced or just released, so it's just hitting dealership lots here in the spring, and Ken Garff Hyundai has one of the very first ones here in the state of Utah. So I figured I would do a walk around and show you some of the cool features of this particular vehicle. Now, this thing looks entirely different than the prior gen Santa Fe. I kind of showed off the very first look of this vehicle back at the LA Auto Show, and it's kind of cool to be able to actually sit behind the wheel now and drive it and see how it feels. But this thing looks like a Land Rover Defender. I mean, let's not beat around the bush. This thing does look a lot more boxier than the prior gen. The prior gen was a lot more smoother, kind of curvier. This thing definitely looks a little bit more utilitarian, more rugged, and the non-hybrid trim levels actually have some off-road trims as well. But starting off with the front end of this vehicle, you can see every single trim level has these LED headlights, and it's this H formation, which obviously stands for Hyundai, and then you kind of have this LED light bar that extends all the way across the front end. It's really cool looking. I like the way this thing looks from the front end. Now, you could maybe argue this kind of looks a little bit like the old Ford Flex, but this is definitely a little bit more upscale, kind of taller, bigger vehicle. I'd say the Defender is probably the closest competitor, and you can tell that, especially when you jump inside. Some of the interior features look a lot like a Range Rover Defender. Now, this particular vehicle is the SEL trim level, and for the Hybrid, that is the entry-level trim. So everything you're seeing here is pretty much the base model Santa Fe, and it's kind of impressive considering you have LED headlights as standard. You do have active shutters located down here at the bottom, and then you kind of have a larger H over here. When you look at the body painted plastic on the front bumper, kind of has an H emblem as well, but very futuristic, kind of rugged front end look to the vehicle. Now, coming across the side of the vehicle, you do have these body painted fender flares as well, along with some black plastic, and this SEL trim level comes with the standard 18-inch wheels. These are 235 60 wide all-season tires, and it looks pretty good overall, although I do prefer the 20-inch wheels that come on the higher trim levels. You do have the little Santa Fe badge located over here, and then body painted mirrors are also standard on the Santa Fe. Now, coming across the side, I do kind of like this dual color where you have the blacked out window section and then the body painted at the bottom, and then you do have some plastic located down here, but you do get roof racks as standard on every single trim level, which is nice because this is meant to be kind of the more off-road oriented version of the Hyundai SUVs. Now, on the calligraphy trim level, you actually have this little handle over here in the C-pillar where you can actually push into it and kind of grab onto it and step on the wheel to give you better access to the roof, but the lower trim levels do not come with that. Coming across the rear end, this is where it kind of gets a little bit controversial. I don't know if I love it or hate it. I kind of wish the taillights were located in a more vertical fashion instead of the horizontal fashion. It definitely looks different, I'll tell you that much. And again, you can see you have the H logo on the rear taillights as well, which are LEDs. You do have Santa Fe script located all across the back and the Hyundai badge as well. From the back end, it looks quite massive because the taillights are so low. Kind of gives you this large optical illusion, making the liftgate look a lot bigger than it probably actually is. But what are your thoughts on the rear end of the Hyundai Santa Fe? Let me know down in the comments below. Now, in terms of the length of this vehicle, it's about 190.2 inches long, which is just around the same as your typical three-row crossover like a Ford Explorer, even the Kia Telluride. In terms of the width of the vehicle, it's 74.8 inches wide. The height is 69.7 inches tall, and you have about 7 inches of ground clearance, so pretty average. Now, the non-hybrid version of the Santa Fe has the XRT, which is the more off-road oriented trim level, and that one has a few extra inches of ground clearance and some beefier tires and some more off-road goodies, but the hybrid version currently doesn't have that as an option for its trim levels. All right, so the exterior is pretty much identical with the hybrid versus non-hybrid version, but under the hood of the hybrid is where it gets a little bit different. First off, I do like the fact that you have hood struts over here on the base trim level. Now, under the hood here is a 1.6 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine that on its own produces a very small 178 horsepower and 195 pound-feet of torque. But it is mated with a 44.2 kilowatt electric motor, and the combined output of this engine is 231 horsepower and 271 pound-feet of torque, which is pretty healthy numbers. Now, the battery here is a very small 1.5 kilowatt hour battery, so it's definitely not a plug-in hybrid by any means, at least at this time. Now, the non-hybrid version is mated to an 8-speed automatic, but this particular hybrid is mated to a 6-speed auto. It's specifically designed for this hybrid engine. And in terms of fuel economy, it's really impressive. We're talking 36 in the city, 35 on the highway for a combined 36. Now, that's for the front-wheel drive version. You can get all-wheel drive for just about $1,800 extra, and that bumps your fuel economy down about 1 mpg. But to get, 35 plus mpg out of a 3-row crossover is really impressive, and that's why I think this thing is going to sell pretty well. Hybrids are kind of selling like hotcakes right now. Now, in terms of the fuel tank here, it's also a pretty decent size. You're talking about 17.7 gallons. So if you're pretty light on the pedal, you could realistically get over 600 miles on a single fill-up of the Santa Fe. Now, one small complaint I do have is the towing capacity. Considering this thing looks like a Defender, kind of a more off-road rugged vehicle, towing capacity is only 2,000 pounds. I believe the XRT, because it has more transmission cooling, has slightly higher towing capacity, but the XRT trim is not available on the hybrid. So 2,000 pounds is what you're limited at in the Santa Fe. All right, now before we jump inside and talk about the interior, I do want to talk about the keys. So first off, your Hyundai key is the new design, which they've shown off on some of the Hyundai Ioniq brands, but it's really held like this. But if you turn it sideways, you see it's the Hyundai logo, which is pretty cool. You do have your alarm at the bottom. You have your remote start-stop, so you can lock the vehicle and turn it on without actually being inside, which is nice. The unlock, the lock button, and then on the side, you do have your button to open up your electronic lift gate, which is nice. Some people complain about this key. I think it's actually pretty cool. It's a little bit different than your typical key, and it looks really nice. I like that they have the logo on it. Now, the second key option you have is Hyundai Key 2.0, and that's where you can use your phone to lock and unlock the vehicle. So similar to like a Tesla, you can keep the phone in your pocket, walk up to it, and it'll automatically unlock. That's a nice feature that's included on every single trim level. Okay, so jumping inside the Santa Fe Hybrid, even this door handle reminds me of a Land Rover Defender, but keep in mind, this is the base trim level. This is the most affordable Santa Fe Hybrid you can buy, and I say that because the materials are actually really nice. So first off, starting off with this door panel, you have nice, this isn't leather, this is fake leather. Hyundai calls it H-Tex, but it is leather wrapped or fake leather wrapped, vinyl wrap material. So it is soft touch material up here. You do have this fake aluminum plastic over here, but it's meant to kind of look like aluminum, resemble aluminum. You do have an aluminum door handle over here, and then some more kind of textured plastic material. But again, this is the entry-level trim level. You still got this fake leather surface over here where you're resting your elbow. You do have automatic windows and door locks, of course, and you can control your mirrors automatically, which is pretty much every single car on the planet. Down here, you do have plastic touch surfaces, which is to be expected. You do have a little water bottle compartment and a small storage compartment over there as well. Hyundai doesn't say how many speakers you have standard, but you can get an optional Bose 12-speaker audio system on the higher trim levels. Now, turning inside, I do like that you have more of those H logos and kind of resembles the headlights. Let's talk about these seats. Again, this isn't real leather, but it feels really nice. Now, some of the higher trim levels, you can get like a premium leather material on the calligraphy trim, but I don't know if you need it. I like the design over here on the seat back. The seat cushion is nice and large and comfortable. Even the headrest looks nice, and these are heated seats as standard. Now, also, these are 8-way power adjustable, and you've got 2-way lumbar support. Now, the passenger seat is manual in the SEL trim level, but you can get a 6-way power seat available on some of the higher trims. Now, although heated seats are included as standard, ventilated seats are not optional on the SEL, but they do come standard on the limited and the calligraphy trim. So if you really need ventilated seats, I'd recommend going for the higher trim levels. All right, now jumping into the driver's seat, this for me resembles a lot of the Defender. I don't know why. The steering wheel I feel like is pulled directly off a Land Rover, but that's not a bad thing. It's awesome. All right, starting off with the center over here, it is kind of this rubberized surface. You may be wondering what these 4 dots are, because usually you have the car logo. Well, Hyundai has started integrating this on some of their vehicles. This is Morse code and the letter is H, so it's kind of just a different way to show off their logo. Lots of Hyundai logos over here. On the left-hand side, this is how you're going to control your adaptive cruise control, which is standard, your menu button to regulate your gauge gauge cluster, which I'll show off in just a second, your volume, of course, and then your navigation for your gauge cluster as well to navigate to different menus. You've also got your distance indicator and your lane following assist, which is again standard. Now on the right-hand side, this is how you're going to control your different audio sources, your voice activation, your button to regulate your seek and track, your volume, your favorites button, which you can pre-program, and your audio. Now, this is not a heated steering wheel, but it is leather wrapped. If you do want to get heated functionality, you got to go for the higher trim levels. On the left-hand side, this is your turn signal and your lighting stock. On the right-hand side, this is your windshield wiper stock. Now, Hyundai has started to integrate this kind of weird looking or funky gear selector. So you actually, pull down to go to reverse, pull up to go into drive, and you push this button to put it into park. But this is kind of an odd type of gear selector, but it frees up a little bit of space here, and it's not technically a column shifter. On the left-hand side of the steering wheel, you got your vent controls. This is your electronic parking brake, your brightness for your gauge cluster. You can open up your lift gate over here, and then your traction control off. And then, I do want to talk about all this material over here. This is, again, that same fake leather-wrapped surfaces that you find on the door panel. There's no, cheap hard-touch plastic here, which is really impressive, again, considering, the price point of this vehicle. Now, I'll also mention that if you do choose the calligraphy trim, you're going to have a 12-inch head-up display in this section over here. Now, let's talk about this gauge cluster display because it's kind of interesting. So, to the left-hand side, you kind of have this speaker grill section over here. I don't know if this is actually a speaker grill, but it's kind of that same felt-like material. But this screen is only 4.2 inches on the SEL trim level, but it doesn't look like it. So let me turn the vehicle on. And as you can see, it makes it look like this section is digital and so is this, but these are just fixed displays. So they're always just going to show your miles per hour and your RPM. You can't actually modify that. The only place you can modify is this center 4.2 inch screen, which is really small, and you can cycle through with different menus over here. But I like how they did it. They didn't make it look, super cheap with some analog displays and a super small screen. It almost makes it look like this is a giant 12.3 inch display. Now, if you do want a 12.3 inch gauge cluster, you're going to have to opt for the limited or the calligraphy trim. The SEL doesn't have that as an option, but I think, for most people, this might be just fine. Now, moving towards the center, this is where you get a 12.3 inch touchscreen as standard, and it runs the latest software. It's very quick, very snappy, very easy to use. All you have is these two home menus with some widgets. You can go through your obvious audio controls. You can pull up your hybrid system to see where all the power is. And you've got wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto, which is nice. Below that, you have a little bit more of this same plastic trim piece you found on the door panel. And then opening this section up, you have a small closed storage compartment, and this is leather wrapped. Now, on the calligraphy and the limited trim levels, this is actually going to be a UV light sanitation station. So you can put your phone in here, close it up, turn on the UV light, and it will sanitize whatever you put in there. So that's kind of a cool touch that you don't see on very many vehicles. Moving down below that, as you can see, there's more H logos over here as you go across the ventilation stack, your engine start stop button over here. And then moving down below that, this is your volume indicator. This is quick access buttons for your navigation, your home menu. You can cycle through various media settings there as well, your seek track, and then you have your tune button over here as well. Now, down below that, this is kind of a half touchscreen, half analog display. So you do have your dual zone climate control, which is standard, and you have ventilation stacks in the second and the third row, which is not something that all 3-row vehicles include. Now, you do have your heated seat functionality there. Your fan speed controls are over here. You can cycle through where you want the airflow going, and then just your various climate control stacks. So it's kind of a mix of digital with some analog as well. At least your temperature controls are analog, and your fan speed is always going to be located down here. So you don't have to navigate to some sort of menu. It's always fixed down in this touchscreen display. Down here, you have your auto brake hold when you're on a hill. You do have different drive modes, nothing too crazy: Eco Sport, My Drive, and Snow. And then over to the right, you have your 4-wheel drive lock. You do have a downhill cruise control. You can pull up your one rear view camera, although the higher trim levels do come with a surround view camera. You do have front and rear parking sensors, but the higher trim levels will also have parking sensors on the side. Moving down below that, a wireless charging pad is standard. Now, the calligraphy trim will actually come with dual wireless charging pads. And the nice thing is this is a little bit lifted, so if you have like a camera bump or something like that, it can still sit here, and it obviously fits some of the largest phones on the market. You do have a USB port over here, and you can cycle either through charging or data transfer, and then you do have another USB-C port right there, and then I'll show you if the phone is actually charging. Behind that, you do have 2 cup holders over here, which are nice and large. And then below that, you have this little pass-through, so you can put like a purse or, you know, just some random things over here. And then you have a 12-volt cigarette-style power outlet. Moving further back, again, more leather touch surfaces. I'm very impressed with the material quality here. Opening this compartment up, it's kind of an interesting arm console. So first off, you know, nothing too crazy to report there. And then I think you do have this little removable tray that gives you a little bit more access. It's actually quite deep. But the reason they have this tray is because this center arm compartment can actually be accessed through the second row. So you can push this button over here and access this first row. And then there's actually a little compartment over here that you can pull out. And there's your tray that can be accessed underneath this compartment over here. So that gives you even extra space, and you can obviously open and close it. So it's nice that you can actually access it in the second row. So if you have snacks for a road trip or something like that, or maybe some headphones, you can still access it in the second row without having to, you know, bug the driver to do that. Now up above you, you don't have a digital rear view camera mirror. However, that is available on the higher trim levels. I believe the calligraphy is the trim level that comes with a rear view digital camera mirror. And then up above you, you do have your typical light controls. No sunroof available on the SEL, but the Limited and the calligraphy come with a sunroof as well. All right, now the last thing I'll mention in the first row is if you want ambient lighting, you're gonna have to opt for the Limited or the calligraphy trim. The standard SEL trim does not come with any type of interior ambient lighting. You do have LED lights up above you, but that's kind of where it stops. Okay, jumping into the second row, surprisingly, same nice use of materials, same fake leather touch surfaces over here, soft touch material. On the higher trim levels, you do have a manual sunshade. This one doesn't come with that on the SEL. Same plastic material, door handles, same plastic over here. You do have 2 cup holders, or 1 cup holder and kind of one smaller, maybe juice box spot over here on the door panel. I don't love that because when you open and close the door, it's going to kind of spill around, but a lot of cars have that. You do have your automatic window controls, same really nice soft touch fake leather material. Another cup holder slot over here, but no additional storage. And then an extension of your sound system. This is all hard touch plastic. Now taking a look at these seats, same nice leather touch surfaces, same cool design on them as well. Headrests are nice and soft for you to rest your head. And then jumping inside, let's talk about some of the space back here. Definitely a good amount of leg room. Hyundai says you have about 41.5 inches of space behind the first row. I do like these additional H logos over here, and then you have some hooks for like grocery bags or something like that. A little compartment over there, and your air vents are located in the B pillar. You don't have any air vents in this section because, like I showed off, you can open this section up or open this section up, and that way you can store some more valuables. These seats also slide back, so as you can see, this one I moved a little bit more forward, this one's a little bit further back, so you do have some additional functionality there if you want some more space in the third row. Now, I will mention the bench seat setup I have over here is standard on the SEL and the Limited trim. If you want the captain's chair setup with the center section all open, you're gonna have to opt for the calligraphy trim, but then your seating goes from 7 individuals down to 6, but it is a little bit of a nicer interior when you have that captain's chair setup. The other option this SEL does not come with is heated second row seats. You get those as standard on the Limited trim level and above. Also over here, you do have a little leather soft touch surface for your arm compartment, and you've got 2 cup holders, and again a little storage spot in the middle where you can maybe put a juice box or something like that. All right, now let's talk about how to get into the third row. First off, as you can see, you can recline these seats quite a bit. You can do that by pushing the button over here at the top of the seat, or you can pull on this handle, and then by pulling on this handle, you can also fold these seats flat. So if you need to load some larger items, you can do that. Now, I do want to show you how to get into the third row. The easiest way is just to push this button over here, and the entire seat slides forward, giving you a little bit of better access into the third row. And that's a standard feature on every single trim level. Now, climbing back here, you do get seating for 7 as standard. And the chairs back here aren't as nice of design as you get in the first and the second row, but they are still that, you know, fake leather wrapped surface over here, not too bad. And you do have headrests to support, and you can recline them at various levels. So this one's a little bit upright, this one's reclined a little bit further back. You do have 2 cup holders back here, and you've got air vents. Now the nice thing back here is you do have your own set of rear AC controls, so you can adjust the fan speed and you can turn it off. Now there's no USB ports located back here. However, the higher trim levels will include a set of USB ports for the third row. Now sitting back here, Hyundai says you have about 30 inches of legroom in the third row, and I gotta say, with this seat being all the way back, I still have about 2 inches or so of space in front of my knees. Now the only problem is my knees are pretty much up to my chest. As you can see here, the angle is quite steep in order for me to fit back here, but in all honesty, at least my knees aren't hitting up against the seat. Also, this seat could easily move forward a couple more inches and be perfectly fine, giving me a little bit of extra space back here because that second row has quite a bit amount of leg room. In terms of headroom, plenty of space back here because this has that boxy exterior shape. I think in general, the third row of this vehicle is probably a little bit more comfortable than the previous generation Santa Fe. All right, now jumping into the trunk, surprisingly, this vehicle comes with an electronic power assisted liftgate as standard. So even this SEL trim level has that luxurious feature. Now climbing back here, there really isn't that much space behind the third row. Hyundai says about 14.6 cubic feet of space back here, and it's pretty tight. You can maybe fit a couple grocery bags, but that's pretty much it. Luckily, to fold down the third row, it's really easy to do. You just pull on this handle, the headrest falls down, then you can simply fold it flat. And Hyundai says with the third row folded down, you have a pretty decent 40.5 cubic feet of space behind the second row. Now, to fold down the second row, you don't actually have to go into the second row door. You can just push this button over here and the seat will automatically fold down. So that's a nice feature. And behind the first row, you have a whopping 79.6 cubic feet of space. So you could definitely fit a lot of stuff over here. Now underneath here, there really isn't much to talk about. I think they have the hybrid battery located somewhere back here. You do have a small compartment on the left-hand side, but that's pretty much all you have. You also have a cigarette style power outlet over here, a couple grocery hooks on the left and the right-hand side. Now, if you do choose some of the higher trim levels, you'll also get a household power outlet located inside of the vehicle, but this SEL trim level does not come with that. Now, in typical Hyundai fashion, you have a large suite of safety features that come standard on every single Santa Fe. So first off, you do have lane following and lane keep assist. You do have blind spot monitoring. You have a forward collision alert system, automatic headlamps. You do get adaptive cruise control as standard. And you also have the safe exit assist system. So if this vehicle senses somebody is coming at you, it won't actually allow you to open that door so you don't accidentally hit a bicyclist or a vehicle as it's racing by you when you're sitting at a parking spot. That's a pretty cool feature that Hyundai has started to integrate in the last few years. Now, there are still a couple optional safety features that you can get, like the blind spot camera, where as soon as you turn on the blinker, it'll actually show you what your blind spot looks like on the instrument gauge cluster display. Also, your 360-degree surround view camera is an optional feature on the higher trim levels. Also, the remote park feature, where you can get out of the car and use the key to actually park this vehicle into a parking spot, that comes on the higher trim levels as well. And lastly, the highway driving assist feature is also available only on the higher trims, and that is where this thing will automatically change lanes for you without you actually having to touch the steering wheel. So those are all optional features, but the need to haves are really included as standard on the SEL trim. All right, next up, let's talk about the pricing of the Santa Fe Hybrid. So the SEL trim level starts around $36,950. If you step up to the limited, you're talking $43,850, and then the top of the line calligraphy trim is $47,000. Now, if you add all-wheel drive, that's an option. It's about $1,800 on every single trim level. This particular SEL in front of me with the all-wheel drive is around $40,400. And in case you're wondering what this color is, it's called Hampton Gray, and it's kind of like this concrete gray color. It's a gloss color, but there are some matte colors available as well for the Santa Fe Hybrid. All right, now in terms of warranty, you have some of the best in the industry. You got a 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty, a 5-year, 60,000-mile bumper-to-bumper warranty, and you get 3 years of complimentary maintenance as standard with every single purchase of a new Santa Fe. All right, lastly, let's get behind the wheel and see how this thing drives. First off, starting it up, it really doesn't make a sound because it relies on that hybrid powertrain, that electric motor or the electric battery, which is just about 1.5 or so kilowatt hours. It's really small, but it's just enough to get you some really nice fuel economy. So putting this into drive, let's hit the road and see how this thing feels. You know, first off, in terms of driving position inside of the cabin, it doesn't feel quite like a Wrangler or a Bronco where it feels like you're sitting on top of it. This kind of feels more like a traditional crossover where you're kind of sitting inside of it. Whether you like that or not, that's kind of up to you. Now, this being a new car, I'm not going to hammer on it, but I do kind of want to see. You know, it's definitely not quick. I was kind of interested to see how the 1.6 liter would accelerate, and it's quite sluggish. I feel like this car could probably use a little bit of a more powerful powertrain, maybe like a 2 liter or something like that. You know, it's not very powerful, I'll tell you that much, but that's not the intent of this vehicle. Fuel economy is the intent. and 36 mpg combined is fantastic. The other thing I will mention is it's a pretty quiet cabin inside, and I think that has to do with the fact that this does have acoustic glass over here, and the suspension is really compliant. You know, being a unibody construction, you're going to have a little bit of a softer ride quality than a body on frame, and you know, this one has the benefits of having the exterior that's more rugged, but the interior that's more subdued, more what you would expect from, you know, your typical crossover. Here we're going to do maybe halfway to the floor pedal to see how this thing accelerates at this stoplight. You know, that was better. It felt better. And I know this vehicle does have that electric motor assist a little bit more on the front end when you're accelerating. So, you know, it would definitely take me driving this car a little bit longer to really feel it. But this isn't a sports car, and it's not, you know, your typical electric type of acceleration. It's just about average. It's fine. It's probably in the mid 7, maybe low 8 seconds 0 to 60, which is kind of common amongst some V6s out there as well. Now, in terms of maneuverability, this thing is perfectly fine. Honestly, it doesn't feel like a very large 3-row crossover, and that's because it really isn't. It's about average. It's really a large 2-row is kind of how you look at it, because even though the 3rd row is usable, a little bit more usable than maybe even the Explorer that I reviewed a couple years back, it's still not, you know, a very comfortable 3rd row. And because of that, it's really maneuverable in city traffic. It's not as large as it looks from the outside. Yeah, I just drove over some potholes, and this thing takes it really well. It's a very compliant, smooth riding vehicle. I think the buyer of this vehicle is going to be very impressed. You get the practicality and the friendliness of a typical crossover with the exterior, more rugged styling that you kind of want, but typically that rugged styling, like in my Ford Bronco, comes with some pretty big drawbacks. It's a loud, uncomfortable vehicle. So, you know, there's pros and cons, but if you want something that looks nice and at the same time, you know, handles really well and it's very easy to drive, Santa Fe is a great option. Okay, to finish off this video, what are my overall thoughts on the Santa Fe Hybrid? Well, I've been pretty impressed with it, and I have a feeling this thing is going to sell really well. You've got a really nice, rugged-looking exterior, which is really popular right now. Everybody wants to have something that looks a little bit more off-roady, and this thing definitely nails it. It looks like a more affordable Land Rover Defender, and the Defender sells like hotcakes. So I love the exterior styling. I also love the powertrain. The fact that you can get 35, 36 combined MPG out of a 3-row crossover is really impressive. Now, personally, I'd pick the limited trim level because it comes standard with some additional cool features, like the ventilated seats in the front, like the all-digital instrument gauge cluster display. You got the blind spot monitoring camera. You also got that 360 camera all around. It's just got some really cool amenities that you'd kind of like to have if you have something that looks this nice. But that's my personal opinion. What are your thoughts on the Santa Fe Hybrid? Would you take this over the competition, and why? Let me know down in the comments below. If this is your first time stopping by, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for all of the weekly car videos. Also check me out on all the social media at SchwayZ_. Till next time, everybody, I hope you stay SchwayZ, stay healthy, have a wonderful day.